Okay, so I'm just gonna like go through my process. I have a 3D model of some crown preps. Um, some of these were actually done by another doctor. They're old, so I usually don't. I'll usually reduce about that much on a crown. This is excessive, but she had them there. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of go down my protocol for prepping veneers or crowns, overlays. Are all pretty similar. Okay, so this is the first burr. Let's see. It is very thick, very wide. It's 2.5 millimeters at the apex, so it's really wide in comparison to an 18. It's a big mama. So I use this for occlusal reduction, especially. I'll come and I'll prep about this angle, not all the way the depth of the burr, and then I'll switch and I'll prep this angle for the occlusal. I like doing full occlusal reduction. Very rarely are we gonna just prep a true veneer, just because most patients liked where it's all white showing. A lot of times there is occlusal decay and things going on. And then I'll also use this burr to do my initial rough cut of facial reduction. So I'll do a little plane here and usually a little plane here. I don't go to the gum line. I'll usually go to about right here and I'll just kind of swoop up like that. So that's the first burr. I always use that. If like, pretend these are, I'll use this. Okay, so if we have a crooked tooth, this isn't a crooked tooth, but this one's out a little farther. So what I would do before I'm making my depth cuts is I would even this out to where everything's kind of in the same plane. So if we have a tooth that's wonky, for example, like if this corner is sticking out more, then I'm going to reduce that corner with this big burr to where it's even. And then I probably reduce the lingual here to artificially the tooths like that. When we drill on those two corners, it will straighten it out. So then we can do our minimal prep veneers. Okay, so then after that, I don't have it here, crap. I use a depth cutter. You know what that looks like. It's like a shaft with 3 diamond discs on it. I use a 0.5 millimeter depth cutter. I'll send you a picture of that. And then I mark those with a pencil. And I usually do 3 lines, one on the incisal, one on the middle, and one on the cervical. And then we go probably back with this one and do our depth and get everything nice and smooth and flat. So that's that. So usually the next burr that I go to, I like fatter burrs because I feel like the middle of the road burrs just aren't great. So I usually don't use a 16. This is actually a, yeah, this is a 16. Yeah, that's a 16. I'll use this. This is the burr that I'll use. And this is a coarse, just like the last one. It's a coarse cut diamond. So this is where I'll go and get my margins. I'll get everything the way that I want it. So let's go back over here. So this is where I'll go and I'll make my margins. And we go along there. So then after that, we've done our incisal reduction. We've done our cervical. If I'm going interproximal, so like for example on this tooth, if I'm going interproximal, I'll usually use a 16 interproximal. So we're not nicking the tooth next to it and we're getting good reduction here, 1.6 millimeters. So we have enough to get a nice strong restoration. A lot of times with this, I still won't go all the way to the gum line. You can see here, these aren't all the way to the gum line. That's because when we took this impression, we had cord packed, but I'll show you why I don't do that yet, because this is still a coarse diamond. You're gonna have rough cut margins, and we want nice smooth margins. So then after that, if we're prepping the linguals, which we did on these, I'll go use, if I'm in a hurry, I'll use a coarse football, or if I've got a little more time, I'll use a fine football. I like fine cut because you're getting smoother preps. you're gonna have better outcomes. And I'll just go and prep the lingual of these guys. We're not prepping margins with this, we're just doing our incisal reduction so we get a nice lingual curve, so we have enough so we're not having thick crowns for doing that. Okay, so then at that point I'll have my assistant go and pack cord in all the margins. There's no substitute for packing cord. They say you can use Traxident. Traxident works in some situations. What I usually do is I'll take my cord and I'll put Traxident on it, or Viscostat, and then I will let that sit for like 10 minutes or so. Then I usually leave the room at that point. I'm not around while the assistant's packing cord. Then I'll come back in and I take my fine diamond and we go on slow speed, and we prep these margins to get them nice and smooth and to the gum line or a little below the gum line. I will never, ever, ever prep a lingual margin to the gingiva. There's no reason to do that. With adhesive dentistry, there's no reason, unless you're replacing an old crown. But you can go 1 or 2 millimeters above the gingiva and you're just fine, even if you're calling it a crown. Yeah, and like I said, most of these aren't my preps. This is some old crowns I took off. So then I'll go back, we'll refine everything, and I'll actually use this burr on a slower speed, and I'll use it to round all my edges. So like on a premolar, I'll go around and I'll round kind of the facial prep versus the occlusal. There's an edge there, so we're gonna go and we're gonna smooth that down. I smooth the incisals. We'll smooth kind of this line angle. The lingual line angles are probably the trickiest to do. And we'll do that. Make sure margins are nice and smooth, that we've got smooth transitions from our facial and interproximal to our lingual. So this one's actually a little more sharp than I would like it to be. So you can come and you can kind of smooth those down and get that better. So then at that point, we're just kind of really fine tuning. So I'll switch to my slow speed latch. This is a medium grit disc that I'll use, and I'll just come and we'll kind of use it to smooth out our edges, make everything round. Sometimes I'll come and I'll polish the facial with it like this, get everything. You don't want to nick the gums, you want to keep everything happy. And you'll come around here. And then sometimes I'll switch back to this on slow speed and just kind of really refine things. I don't like doing water at this step because you're going slow enough, you're not creating heat, but then you can really see where your margin is. Make sure you're getting a good stop so the lab can get a good restoration, but you don't want to go excessive either where you're over prepping. So that's about it. So if we're doing a true veneer, I'll use this burr. I use this burr more for actually a seat. I'll use this, so if, I can't really, we'll pretend this is facially prepped. So if we're creating a transition from our interproximal margin to our incisal or occlusal margin, we want to make sure that's rounded, and sometimes that can be really thin. So we'll use this to smooth that transition out and make it good. It's a lot easier to see in loops. Then on seat day, I'll use this burr first, and I'll just zip interproximally, zip, 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 and then I'll do a little bit on the facial, and then we use our crown splitter to remove the temporaries, and then a scaler to get them off. Also on prep day, after you place your provisionals, I'll use this to kind of burnish the margin of those provisionals so it's even with the gums, even with the prep, but we're not ditching our preps and causing voids. This is a really good way to clean up temporaries. You just stick it down in the sulcus just barely and run it along the facial surface of the tooth and get a nice contour. Make sure you're cleaning out the papillary area so the gums don't flatten out with the temporaries. And that's it. Cool. Let me know if you have any more questions.